In case I happen to have a viewer today, just to explain what this video is, I have wanted to make videos on YouTube for a long time, like half my lifespan, but I've been too much of a perfectionist to get started. So now I sit in front of a camera and talk for 10 minutes. So if I happen to talk about anything interesting and I put that in the title and that's why you clicked on it, please excuse any rambling or trailing off, especially in the beginning. You'll know, like, this video isn't necessarily directed at whatever it is I talk about. Yeah, so I'm gonna post pretty much no matter what, unless something really crazy happens. Because that's what I gotta do if I'm gonna commit to this and actually get videos up. Yeah, I've just been sitting in my car listening to videos about narcissism and thinking about narcissistic abuse. Mostly because I have a narcissistic mother. And I've been thinking about if there's any possible way I can convince my dad that she's a narcissist. So, just going over different conversation possibilities in my head. Okay, I guess I can elaborate on that. It feels like a chore to talk right now. Sometimes it feels natural. If I get a thing to talk about, I'll just start talking. Right now I'm just trying to fill up time, so I guess I'll elaborate more on what's going on with my family, but yeah, it's not gonna flow from me, essentially. So my mom is what's called a communal narcissist. And I'll quickly describe what a narcissist is. If you're watching this, you probably already know it. But just in case, a narcissist is someone who is so severely self-conscious that they basically can't handle any form of criticism at all. And they're so self-centered that they don't care who they hurt in order to make sure that their validation is achieved. So, a communal narcissist is a type of narcissist who receives their validation from doing things for other people. So, somebody who is a communal narcissist will think like, I'm so loving, I'm so giving, I'm so generous, I'm so kind, I care about people so much. And then they'll try to prove it to other people and to themselves by doing nice things for other people. And, yeah. My dad is completely blind to that, and he's a pretty good guy. I like him. Many times in my life, I've tried to talk to him about the issues with my mom, and he would just make excuses for her. And he would say things like, well, your mother loves you, it's just that you don't understand that she loves you because she shows her love by doing things for you, and maybe, you didn't understand that as being love, and you're over-exaggerating how bad that things were. Not on purpose. Like, he basically made some psychology excuse up about how your brain remembers things that are horrible because they're so, like, outside of your normal range, and they're so heavy in emotion that your brain remembers them better. And that normal everyday life, things being good, you're just gonna forget it because, it's not significant and it doesn't stand out. And, that's true. He has a point with that. But at the same time, really happy memories stand out, not just really bad ones. And I don't really have a whole lot of really happy memories about my mom. Second of all, the stuff I remember about her was patterns. It was like all the time. It was yelling and screaming over little things regularly, spanking not to punish us, to teach us a lesson, but to take out her anger, and invalidating like my own perspectives. I say our because I have siblings, but I guess I should really only be talking for myself. It was a whole pattern, and it's the fact that he could claim that it was simply, oh, there's a person walking by. Yeah. The fact that he could claim that it's all just psychology, and I'm forgetting all the time she was a good mother and remembering all the time she was a bad mother, does not hold up. And now that I understand narcissism a lot better, specifically because I've learned about communal narcissism, which I didn't know until recently, I feel like there's a way to get to him, especially because now they're going through a potential separation. My dad's been dating somebody else for a few months, and I feel like now more than ever, I mean, I probably would have just not tried it if they were still together, but basically what happened was a couple of, like 2 years ago or something like that, and I'm 24, so this was well after I'd left home and been on my own. This is, I'd visit for vacation and they'd catch me up on what was happening. But it started off with, mom and dad are apparently sleeping in separate rooms now. And then it was mom told dad that and I was hearing this from my mom mostly. Because I talked to my parents more than my siblings. And my parents, I don't know, like, I ask my mom a lot more questions. Not sure why. I think I just want to pick her brain and see how she sees things. Like, I know I'm not going to lead her to basically just hearing the ridiculous stuff she says. But it was like, she was talking about how she wanted to get a divorce from him because she couldn't give him what he needed, and it was a phony excuse. There was more stuff to it. It was like, he just doesn't make me happy and I just don't make him happy, and we'll still always love each other, but the romance is gone and it's not coming back. But she hasn't actually decided to go through on the divorce. And my dad got kind of sick of waiting to see what was going to happen, if she was going to divorce him or not. So they kind of decided that he would move out so that they were effectively doing something to make something happen. So they weren't just living in limbo anymore. And then they would decide from there if they wanted to get a divorce or try and fix their marriage. So the person's coming back. He's been walking back and forth. I don't know what he's doing, man. Not sure if he's like just trying to take a walk because it's his break and he's bored, or if he's like going back and forth from his car or something. But he works at the McDonald's. Look, see? McDonald's. Yes. Pardon me while I eat. So my dad moved out in the early spring of this year, and the possibility for divorce happened about a year or two ago, and he is now in his own apartment that's close by. And this past weekend I went to, or maybe it was the weekend before, I went to his apartment. Oh, it was Tuesday, because I remember I went to vote, and then I went over to his, was it Tuesday? Oh my goodness, I can't remember what day the election was. Whatever day the election was, I went over to his place, and I met his girlfriend, whom he's apparently been with for a few months, and we talked, and I didn't want to bring my mom up too much because that would have been somewhat inappropriate, given that I was meeting his new girlfriend for the first time. But we mentioned her a very little bit at the end. And specifically in the context of the relationship. I won't get into that though. But yeah, I mean, just kind of one of the things we talked a lot about like religion and relationships in general, not necessarily romantic ones, but even like friendships. We talked about like love and unconditional love and what that means. And he was saying things that seemed to indicate that he was now questioning his perspective on how much he should sacrifice in a relationship for the other person. So I feel like now more than ever he's kind of open-minded to the possibility that she's actually abusive. And yeah, so I'm hoping I can do that. Something I wanted to share. So I got married a couple of weeks ago, and I was wondering, before I got married about the role that narcissists play in a daughter's wedding, because my mom was starting to get involved in mine, trying to get involved in planning mine and helping me with mine, and I didn't really want that, so I was looking for what kind of stuff she might try and pull, and I didn't find a whole lot. So I tried looking for communal narcissistic mothers, and I found even less on that. So I figured, if the content that I feel like I need isn't out there, the solution is to make my own. Well, it depends on why you're doing it, of course, but this information needs to be out there. So if there's anyone wondering, what to expect from a communal narcissistic mother in a wedding, I figure I'd share what happened with mine a little bit, just in case it helps. Apparently there are a lot of really horrible horror stories. Mine isn't that bad. What I'll say is narcissistic abuse is worse when you're strongly attached to the person, and when you're really invested in them. But my mom was so horrible during the early half of my childhood that I kind of disconnected from her as much as possible. So it was easier for me in the sense that I don't have the same kind of emotional attachment to her that some women do, or I guess men do, to their narcissistic mothers. Because it's when you're willingly engaged in an abusive relationship that it psychologically damages you the most. But I was unwillingly engaged in that relationship, so I already kind of didn't like having her around. I knew that, but she's always been, because she's a communal narcissist, it's always been about how she can help everybody, how everybody needs her and we can't get along without her, and devaluing our own capabilities, my own capabilities, which kind of worked. I'll explain. So it started a couple months ago, before I was engaged. My husband proposed to me in June, and then I think it was around the springtime, and my mom came to me and said, we've never had a great relationship, and I don't have a great relationship with my mother, and I don't want to end up like her, and having all my kids not like me, and I wasn't there for them, so I'd like to try and get close to you. And I told her, all right, I'm willing to see if you've changed. I'm willing to try a relationship with you, but I'm going to be really cautious about opening up to you and letting you in, because I need to see that you've actually changed. I need to see that it's consistent. And I didn't say this out loud because I didn't want to set her off, because I didn't know if she'd actually changed or not, but I was like, I need to see that you actually know that you're abusive and take accountability for your actions and not make excuses for yourself. So she said okay, and for a little while we talked on the phone a little more often, and it was pretty pleasant, and I talked about some personal things that I calculated that even though they were personal, it wouldn't hurt me too bad if for some reason she hadn't changed. So anyways, my husband proposes around June, and we get to planning our wedding, and we needed to be married by this month, October, because I'm supposed to be, there's stuff going on at work with me that we wanted to get married before all that stuff happened, so we kind of had to rush the wedding a little bit. We ideally wanted to get married in the spring, but we had to get married in October instead. So we pushed the wedding, sooner than we wanted. And fortunately, I had $26,000 in savings, I think. And that's an important detail. I'm not saying that to it's generally not societally acceptable to talk about how much money you have. But I have a purpose for saying that. But I had $26,000 in a long-term savings account and about $5,000 in a short-term savings account. So my mom starts asking me questions about the wedding planning and all this other stuff. She's talking about how I need to have a budget. And what's your budget? And I said, I don't really have a budget. Sorry, I'm having issues with my jaw. I said, I don't really have a budget. I'm just going to, look at the cost of each individual thing I'm trying to pay for. I'm going to see if it works with how much money I have. I'm just going to feel it out, see if it feels right. And that's kind of how I've handled money my whole life, and I've done pretty well with money. I mean, after all, I had like 26 plus 5,000. That's like $31,000 in savings by the time I was 24. That's pretty freaking good, considering the fact that a lot of people my age are in debt. So my method works for me. Anyways, and I didn't go to college, by the way. So my parents didn't pay for a college fund. I started working as soon as I turned 18. And I had $1,000 that my parents had given me as like a head start to life. So I started life with a high school degree and $1,000. So all that money was my own completely. I had no financial support from my parents other than the $1,000. So anyways, she's asking me about what's my budget going to be. And I don't like to touch my long-term savings account. And I was like, I'll try and plan the wedding within $5,000, my short-term savings account. But because of the coronavirus, I couldn't get married in my church, which meant I had to pay for a venue for an outdoor wedding, and I had to pay for tents and things like that. And because there was a lot of stuff that because of the virus, I had to accrue more costs than I originally planned on spending. So I was like, okay, I'm going to dip into my, I'm getting ahead of myself. I told her I don't have a budget. She said, you should have a budget because the money can add up faster than you think it's going to. And I'm like, sure, I believe that, but having a budget doesn't work for me. Feeling out how much things are going to cost work for me. But to get her off my back, I just said, okay, my budget's $5,000. So later on, she's grilling me about the $5,000 and, how much the wedding is costing and how much done I'm getting planned. And I told her, look, I don't feel comfortable talking about wedding planning with you. I'm a grown woman. I can do this myself. And, I'm happy to have you. I'm glad that you want to help. But I can do this on my own. It's fine. And she would still try and grill me anyways. By the way, on a side note about the whole, if you're familiar with the term gaslighting, if you're watching this, I assume you are. Gaslighting is basically when you get someone to doubt their own sanity, whether intentional or intentional, you get them to doubt their own sanity by, completely, how do I explain it? Basically, she was asking me questions, and it was hard to explain what was so bad about that, but there was something not right about the way she was asking me questions about my wedding planning, something that felt like a violation of a boundary, but I couldn't describe it, and it was worse because I couldn't tell people what was going on because I was like, what am I going to say? My mom is asking me questions about the wedding planning. They're going to be like, oh my goodness, your mom is so horrible. She's asking you questions about your wedding planning. Lighten up. She's just trying to help. You're exaggerating. So I, that was hard. And I eventually came up with the term grilling. And I tried to figure out how to explain, at least to myself, the difference between grilling and the questioning. Still haven't figured it out. But I just accept that she was grilling me, and I know that there was something wrong about the way she was asking me about my wedding plans. So, I'll hold off on the finances for now because I want to go to another thing she was talking about. That way we can do this somewhat chronological order. There are 4 kids. They're not kids now. They're all grown up. But when I was a teenager, over the course of a few years, we ended up adopting 4 kids whom I do not consider to be my siblings. They're legally my siblings. They share the same last name as me. And they, what's it called? I don't consider them to be my siblings. 2 of them are horrible, disgusting human beings. One of them seems to be a horrible, disgusting human being. I don't know that for sure, but I haven't bothered to get to know him. And then the other one is okay, but we're not close, so I don't really consider her my sister, but she's fine. And my mom was trying to she was asking me, so who are you going to invite your siblings, your adopted siblings? And I said no. And she's like, oh, but they live several states over. It's not like they're actually going to come. Just extend the invitation over. Like, because if you want to have a relationship with them one day, this will be the bridge. And I told her, no, I don't want to have a relationship with them. If I do want to have a relationship with them one day, I can reach out to them. Also, they can reach out to me. They don't reach out to me. You're acting like this is, like I'm going to burn down the only bridge we have to a relationship, which I don't want, by the way, just because I don't invite them to my wedding. I'm not going to do that. We had that conversation more than once, and all throughout my teen years, we have repeatedly had conversations about how I don't consider them my siblings, not because they're adopted, I just don't. And how, she can consider them her children if she wants, but they're not my siblings. So my mom is bothering me about that. She's also bothering me about how many guests I'm going to have, because it's the virus. And I told her, look, people know there's a virus going on. When I invite them to my wedding, if they're concerned about the virus, they'll ask me questions. They can ask me, are we doing masks? Are we doing social distancing? Will there be hand sanitizer? Or no, I can't come. And we did have a lot of people say, look, I can't come because we're trying to watch out for the virus. That was totally okay. But my mom is hassling me on the one hand about how many people are going to be there. By the way, I had to cut out the majority of my extended family, which I did not want to do. I wanted to invite all of my cousins, all of my aunts and uncles. Even if they couldn't all make it, I wanted to invite them all. And I could not invite them all because there were already going to be a lot of people there. So I cut out people that I wanted to be there. I cut out lifelong friends. Not lifelong, because I didn't have friends when I was younger, but the friends that I have that will last me a lifetime that I'm really close to, I couldn't invite a bunch of them. And so my mom is still hassling me about how, there are going to be so many people at the wedding. I'm really concerned. By the way, we had about 60 people there. And my mom, it was outside too. We didn't do social distancing, and masks were optional, so I will say that. But again, if you're concerned about the virus, why would you be going to a wedding, And anyways, so controversial opinion. Hope I don't get much hate for that. Anyways, so my mom's complaining about how there were too many people at the wedding. Even before the wedding happened. There are too many people. How many people are going to be there? I'm concerned about the number of people that are going. Meanwhile, I'm cutting out lots of people that I want to go to my wedding. And then she has the audacity to ask me repeatedly if I want to invite the adopted siblings. And I tell her again, no. One day, she asked me who's all invited, because we haven't gotten invitations. Long story short, my cat peed on a bunch of the invitations. We didn't have time to send them all out. Not everyone got a physical copy. We reached everybody by text that didn't get a paper invitation. Anyways, so she's like, I haven't gotten an invitation yet, and I don't even know if I'm invited to this wedding. Who's all going? And I said, the entire immediate family is going. She's like, what does that mean? Like, grandma and grandpa aren't going because of the virus. And I'm like, they're not immediate family. Yes, they are. No, immediate family means parents and siblings. And she's like, oh, okay. Later, I hear from my youngest sister that, hey, did you know that there were 3 boys and 1 girl of the adopted ones? She's like, hey, did you know that the girl is coming over and to your wedding? And I was like, no. And my sister says, well, she is. She apparently bought a plane ticket and she's flying down here. Mom said that you invited her. And I was like, no, I did not invite her. In fact, I said, no, I didn't invite her. And sorry, the phone cut out and I lost what I was saying. Backtracking a little bit, my mom sent me a text saying, hey, Grandma and the adopted girl, she used her name, but I'm not going to use that. Grandma and the adopted girl are wondering about the wedding. And I sent my mom a text going, what about the wedding are they wondering about? And my mom never responds. Like, that was the last I heard of it. So my sister says, oh, she's showing up and she bought a plane ticket. And Mom said that you invited her. I went, no, I did not. And my sister knows that my mom is abusive better than anyone in the family. So, my goodness, my phone is at 5%. And I'm in my car with no car charger. Anyways, so, apparently what had happened was my mom had somehow taken my statement of, oh, the whole family is invited, to mean that includes the adopted girl, even though I explicitly told her multiple times I'm not inviting them. And even though she was complaining about the number of people going to my wedding. And she went out of her way to basically tell this girl, like, oh yeah, like, I guess you're invited, she didn't say you weren't, I'm pretty sure you're invited. So she bought a plane ticket and flew out. And, I gave her a hug at the wedding and I thanked her for coming out. But, again, she's not horrible. She's just not my sister. And my mom, manipulated that situation. And I got really mad at the adopted girl, too. Like, it was just an intrinsic response. I was really mad at her. But then I'm like, no, this is a situation that my mom manipulated and fabricated. And I guarantee you that she lied to and manipulated the adopted girl who came over anyways. Like, she's not the enemy. She's just another person mixed up who's unfortunate enough to know my mother. So there was all that going on. I'm going to hang up and go charge my phone. And then when I come back, I will tell you about, I'm mostly just saying this so that I remember. I'm going to tell you about the main last piece of the thing that happened, which is a couple of weeks before the wedding, my mom sent me a message asking me how the wedding planning was going, and I didn't respond to her for several days. I'll explain to you why that was and what happened afterwards. Here I am at home, and my phone is charging. So, as I was saying, a couple of weeks ago, my mom sent me a text message that was saying, hey, how are you doing? I just wanted to, see how you're doing. How's the wedding planning going? Talk to you soon. And I got a little nervous because there was a lot of stuff for the wedding planning that I had to do still. Of course there always is, but it was like I was not on my timeline. It was like there was way more to do proportionately than how much time was left compared to how much time I'd had to plan and how much stuff I'd already done. And I was like, I just need to knock a few things off my to-do list. That way when she calls me, or that way when I call her, when I get back to her, I can be like, oh yeah, the wedding planning is going well. I've taken care of this. I've taken care of that. That way she couldn't make me feel like crap by, saying like, oh, I'm concerned that your wedding is so soon and you haven't taken care of all this stuff. And I didn't want her to get involved in it because I was very wary. She's a narcissistic mother and this is a wedding. I don't know what the hell she's going to try and do. So I need to watch my back and be really careful to not let her get involved in the planning. So didn't really let her get involved in the planning, and she sent me, she didn't say anything back. There was no, hey, like, did you get my message? Like, none of that. And by the way, she hasn't really talked to me since the wedding, which was over 2 weeks ago. which isn't necessarily a big deal, but it just, she wants to be in a relationship with me, and she tries to talk to me a lot when the wedding planning is going on, at least in the beginning. But I kind of try to keep her at a distance, and then this thing happened. So anyways, I did some more planning, and maybe a week later, and this was already probably a week before the wedding, I finally messaged her back. I'm like, okay, I've taken care of enough now. I'm gonna talk to her, let her know how it's going, apologize for not getting back to her so soon. And I felt guilty about waiting so long. And it wasn't just because a narcissist will make you feel guilty, and even when you're not doing anything wrong. But my thought was, I was emotionally strong enough and resilient enough and good at dealing with narcissism at this point in my life enough that I could have spoken to her, and I could have handled a little lecture about how I have to do more planning, and it wouldn't have been that big a deal. It's like I was protecting my boundaries, yes, but I would have been fine without protecting them to that degree. So it would have been polite to reach out to her. So I told her, hey, here I am, sorry it took so long to get back to you, but I'm getting back to you now. And I even explained to her why. I'm like, it's just, I gotta set these boundaries because our relationship is still forming, and I still don't know, like, how much you've actually changed versus, so I didn't want to risk being shamed or demeaned this close to my wedding, because I, thought it would negatively affect me. And she was like, oh, I'm very hurt that you went so long without responding to me. And you know how, like, when I hurt you, like, I had to earn your trust back. Well, now you have to earn my trust back. And I felt really bad, and I actually cried. And then I went to go see her the next day because I had to pick something up, which is another story entirely. I had to pick something up from my godmother, who is a much better maternal figure than my mom is. She didn't have time to see me that day, so I had to pick up a thing from her from my mom instead. So anyways, I go down there and I bring my mom, like, dark chocolate, because she loves dark chocolate, as a gift. And we talk for a little bit, and she's a little bitter, but she was talking about how it really hurt her how I didn't involve her in the wedding planning. She wasn't just going on, like, I prompted her a little bit, and she didn't talk excessively about it. It was just like, it was clear that she was bitter, and she was trying mostly to keep it to herself, but she was also being truthful about how upset and betrayed she was. So I didn't think about this till later, but it's kind of interesting how she abused me my entire childhood, and then she gained trust back from me. And then I have to work to gain her trust back because I don't respond to her for a week because I'm worried that she's still abusive, like she has been my entire childhood. It's just really warped that she, should expect that I can trust her after just a few months of what she thinks is real, genuine change after a lifetime of mistreatment. And then, 1 week of not being open to her and letting her be there for me and letting her feel needed is horrible heartbreak. So there's that right there. That's messed up. But all in all, one more thing. So one of the things that my sister had told me is, and this actually got inside my head a bit. I probably shouldn't have known this. Like, as soon as my sister told me, I'm like, oh man, I probably shouldn't have heard that, because it screwed with me pretty badly. My mom was telling people that she didn't even think the wedding was going to happen, because I just, wasn't doing a good job at planning it, and she wouldn't be surprised if, like, the wedding just didn't happen. And that really got in my head. I talked to my then fiance about that a lot, and he was very reassuring and comforting. And he knows that she's a narcissist. He can't necessarily see it for himself, but he believes me when I say it. And so he was a huge help. But so the wedding goes off, and there were a couple of issues. It didn't go perfectly smooth. That's to be expected. But for the most part, it went well, and I got compliments from people. And the best man's girlfriend even said, not to me, to somebody else, who then told it to me, that I'd managed to pull off a fairy tale wedding, and things I was really happy with how well I had done, and I was really proud that I had put the wedding together almost completely by myself. My fiance helped a little, and his dad paid for the rehearsal dinner. But for the most part, it was all me. It was all my money, all my planning, all my arrangements, with just, one thing in particular that my husband was in charge of, and then the rehearsal dinner on his dad, which I wasn't going to have a rehearsal dinner anyways, so it was just a nice bonus. But my mom didn't really talk about the wedding much, which, wasn't a big deal in and of itself, I mean, maybe it was. Maybe it's a normal thing for a mother to come up and go, wow, like, your wedding was so beautiful. You looked so pretty in your dress. The food was amazing. And I like your taste in centerpieces. I feel like that kind of stuff is normal. But it didn't feel like a big deal. She didn't say anything until I realized, wait a second. She's been telling people, behind my back that, I don't think that this wedding is even going to happen. Like, she's not going to be able to do this. And then there's an undertone of, without my help, she's not going to be able to do it without my help. But then there's no, wow, like, I'm sorry, I underestimated you, to be honest. I didn't know if you could do it. Or not even that strongly, just I was a little concerned because it felt like your planning was a little messy, but everything was so wonderful, and I'm so proud of you, and I think you did a great job. None of that. So that was all the stuff leading up to the wedding. Now, on the wedding day itself, oh boy, on the wedding day itself, so I have a daughter who is not from my husband. Somebody else made her, and but my husband's her dad. Anyway, so my daughter's about 2 years old, and it was my godmother was going to watch her during the wedding. So at my godmother's table sat my oldest friend, who I've known since I was like really, really, really young, and my mom. They were sitting at the same table. So my friend came up to me at one point, and she's like, "Hey, like, your mom just passed your daughter off to me." And I was like, "Hey, like, don't you want to play with your daughter?" And my mom's like, "No, I'm good." And so, my friend is watching my daughter for most of the wedding. And then at one point we're doing like the Cupid shuffle, and I'm on the dance floor, and a bunch of people are on the dance floor, and the groom is not on the dance floor. That's another story. Anyways, so my friend is holding my daughter, and she's off to the side, not on the dance floor, but she has my daughter, and she's dancing to the side, like, with her. And my mom comes up, and according to my friend was like, "Yo, like, your mom came up to me and said, 'How dare you? Like, you're dancing with my daughter. Like, you're spending too much time with my daughter. What are you doing?'" And I go, "Well, wait. Did she say the words, 'How dare you?' Or was that the basic gist of what she was telling you?" And my friend says, "No, like, she actually said those words. She literally said, 'How dare you?' and told me that I was spending too much time with her." And so we have a little chat about how ridiculous it is because my mom passes her off and doesn't want to spend time with her own granddaughter, and, then wants to say, "How dare you," for showing my daughter a good time. My daughter should be having a good time too. So, yeah, there was that. Oh, there was one last thing. Oh, goodness. I had it earlier and then I lost it. It was oh, yes. Okay. I'm pretty sure that this is the last thing. So, a couple of months ago, this friend who ended up watching my daughter during the wedding, she and I were on the phone, And, you know, since we'd known each other since we were little kids, she's one, like most of my friends I made when I was a teenager, either in high school or like they're friends that I made during my adult life. Because I didn't really have friends so much before then. But she was someone that I had known since we were really little. We weren't friends when we were kids, but we knew each other and we were supposed to be friends. And then we became actual friends later. Anyways, so she and I were on the phone, and I don't remember how it came up, but I was like, oh yeah, like my mom's actually abusive. And she's like, what? What do you mean your mom's abusive? And I'm like, oh, well, she's emotionally abusive. And I gave her examples of the kind of things my mom did and just her patterns of thinking and behavior. And she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense because I've had interactions with her where she's done that kind of thing. And then she told me about an interaction or two she had with my mom where my mom was being narcissistic. So then we had a little conversation about what would my friend's mom think, because my friend's mom apparently occasionally talks about and wonders about my mom. And I don't remember how it came up, but I'm like, hey, you can tell your mom that I said my mom's abusive. I'm not keeping it a secret anymore. If you want to tell her, that's fine. Like, there's no reason to protect my mom anymore. So I do that, and I told her, yeah, it's not a secret. You can tell your mom I'm done keeping secrets. And my mom and my friend was like, oh, she probably won't believe me. So I sent a text message to my friend's phone, and I was like, hey, this is for you, friend's mom. Just wanted to let you know that, you know, my friend's not making it up. I really did, in fact, say, yes, my mom is abusive. So my sister, before the wedding, it was like the day before the wedding or something, we were hanging out, and my sister told me, oh yeah, so like there are people who haven't been able to get a hold of you for whatever reason, and they've been contacting mom to try and get the information from her, and she's been telling them that you think she's abusive. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, so she'll be on the phone and they'll be asking her questions about like details of the wedding, and they'll, like, you know, where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be, that kind of thing. And mom's just been like, oh, well, I don't know anything. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to the wedding myself. I'm just trying to help my daughter out with the wedding, but, you know, apparently that makes me abusive. Apparently my daughter thinks I'm abusive. So, yeah, that was apparently a thing that she told, I think, like 2 people that my sister said she witnessed a phone conversation for. But yeah, so all things considered, while my wedding planning didn't go as while I didn't do as well as I could have. One, I'm only 24. 2, I did it almost by myself, and it's okay for things to not be perfect. It's okay that I made mistakes on my wedding planning and things didn't go quite the way I wanted them to, or that the arrangements and, you know, invitations and stuff maybe didn't go as smoothly for guests as they could have or should have. So I'm gonna be at peace with that. Things happened as well as they needed to, and I'm really proud of myself. Even though there is that little part of me that is like, you know, nitpicking and feeling embarrassed about how I didn't do as well as I could have. Especially because there's a part of me that feels like, oh, well, you know, my mother's right. Like, I did need her help, and it was just my pride that was keeping me from accepting her help. There's the temptation to do that to myself, and I have to remind myself that the reason that I didn't let her help with the planning wasn't because I was being prideful, or wasn't because I thought I could do it all by myself, like perfectly on my own. It was because I knew that she has not been a reliable, trustworthy person, and because I didn't need the invalidation and loss of control that I was going to feel if I let her help. That it was better to do the wedding myself and have it not be so great than to accept her help. And, you know, I also kind of reminding myself that I had a lot of learned helplessness from her growing up, because her attitude was, you need me, like everyone needs me, no one can do anything without me. And she didn't really, like, she didn't encourage either. She tore down. So all growing up and through my teenage years and through the first few years of my adulthood, I was really incapable. And I I had to grow up myself. I had to teach myself how to get basic life things done. And I had to figure out all on my own how to be able to actually live my life like functioning, be a functioning adult. Um, because she didn't teach me basic stuff. Like for several years of my early adulthood, even calling the dentist to make an appointment produced a ton of anxiety because I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to say. Like I didn't know how to make an appointment at the dentist's. And it's ridiculous. But I still kind of struggle, like especially with the wedding. I've been struggling with, what's wrong with me, like how stupid or incapable am I that I couldn't do some of these basic things. Like I've got a friend, one of my best friends got married a couple weeks before I did, and her wedding, there were things about her wedding that I struggled with that she got just fine. And it kind of feels, maybe embarrassing is the right word. I'll just kind of like I'm not capable, like there's something wrong with me. And I have to remind myself that not only have I done well for my age, especially considering that I did it on my own and that I got a lot of compliments, but on top of that, I did that having a mother who didn't teach me how to be self-reliant, who taught me to only depend on her, and who set me up so that I couldn't do things without her help, like plan a wedding, and I still managed to do it without her help. So all in all, like, I would say that it wasn't a horror story. There are a lot of women who unfortunately have had their weddings ruined by their narcissistic mothers, and I am very lucky that it didn't happen. There still were events, which was kind of exciting. There is a part of me that likes drama, but it's also, something that I can kind of hopefully put out there to help somebody else to know kind of what to expect and watch out for, and maybe to notice patterns in my mother that they've seen in their own, just to give that little bit of extra validation that what's happening is a normal thing and that it's a pattern and that there's a name for it. And yeah, hopefully this helps somebody. And I'm really proud of myself for making a video this long. I hope that it does somebody some good. Yeah, have a good night.